Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Journey to Multifamily Millions. I'm your host, founder, and CEO of Zana Investments, Tim Little, and on today's show, we have with us Madhavi Jain. Madhavi is the president of Think Outside the Stocks. She has experience of over 16 plus years in the IT industry, mostly with one of the top 5 consulting firms. After her sudden corporate exit in 2015, she started her financial freedom journey. With a passion to bring strategies she learned to the high-skilled immigrant community, she founded Think Outside the Stocks, a private equity firm focused on commercial real estate. As an active syndicator, she has a multifamily portfolio of 790 units valued at over $170 million as a co-GP. Madhavi, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Tim. It's such a pleasure to be here. And thank you so much for that kind introduction. I think that's something that I do. So thank you so much.
Yeah, sometimes we're surprised to realize how much we do until we hear someone else say it. I know that's been the case with me. So I gave everyone a high-level overview of your background, but on this show, we really like to get into the details of how you got started on your journey to multifamily millions. So if you could please just give us a little more background on that.
It's interesting, right? You asked Tim that just to provide that background. The background could mean so much to so many people. For me, my background actually starts back when I'm in my country. In my country, growing up, I was sort of a male dominating that kind of a household, right? So I grew up not having so much of need to look into the finances, right? So it was my dad who managed the finances. He was doing the bank thing and investing or saving and all that stuff. Not so much of involvement. I don't even remember going to a bank and growing up. So I came my background where it was not necessary for me to think about finances, right? So the background really goes back that far. And when I came to this country, right, as an immigrant some 22 years back, I came to this country, it's almost 9,000 miles away from my roots. I mean, I literally uprooted myself from there and bought myself here with my husband, 2 suitcases, and maybe I think we had, I don't even remember, a couple of hundred converted dollars. That's where we started. I mean, I know you started your journey with like a negative money because you had that student loan, but we started it in this country where we just didn't know anything about what the law of the land is. And we started from scratch. And it was a struggle. Being an immigrant, we saved every dollars. We worked very hard. We had visa issues, which is incredible to go through. I came as a dependent. So getting that on a work visa and to be able to live that dream that, hey, I'm working in one of the top 5 consulting. So I reached to that point. And then there came a point that my health kind of started kind of going down the hill. And I had to pull that plug kind of suddenly in 2015 that I just had to stop working, period. So there was me working, living the dream, top 5 consulting, great career options, great projects. But then suddenly the next date was a job. And I had my daughter at that time was a middle schooler, and I kept looking at her and I was like, oh my God, she's going to be through high school soon in school. And I do not want to limit her education based on what I can afford. So it was at the point where you were thinking of your education and how you didn't want it to compromise on the quality of education and the money that it provides. That's exactly where I was. And that was my biggest why. And that desperation that I had to find something very quickly that can create that passive income for me. And I can kind of replace my W2 income or at least make some of it. So my financial freedom journey started in a reverse order. It's not that I was doing my W2 job. I built up my W2 income. I left my job, but I left my job to leave my job and started my reverse engineering journey into the real estate world.
Yeah, and so much of what you talked about is really that immigrant success story, right? You coming over, starting anew, but then finding success through your own hard work and your efforts. So congratulations on that, first of all. But it almost sounds like it became too much of a good thing in terms of how hard you're working when you're trying to move up that corporate ladder. And it sounds like it became a little too much at one point, which is why you had to take that break. So I guess my first question would be, was there a point where you started to evaluate really what was important to you and that you felt you were just working too hard and maybe not focusing on other things that were also important to you, whether it be your health, your family, etc.
Yeah, quite honestly, I did not have time to take because that's sometimes 50, 60 hours of work week. It was literally growing up two children. It felt like almost like a routine that was just going on such a fast pace that I did not have time to even think about that. Just getting up, getting the kids ready, whether it's summer or holidays or whatever, getting them to the school, picking them up at 6:30, showering them, getting the homework done, and putting them down to the bed. That was just a cyclic routine. It was just a cycle I would have never disturbed because I thought I was living a dream. I thought I had everything that I have ever dreamt of. Because I had to take that break, I'm very grateful that I could take that pause. I could build up myself to find even these different opportunities. And what happened after that is I started dwelling into real estate because, of course, real estate is 90% of people have become millionaires through the real estate. So there is a big component of real estate that was just completely missing from my strategy. That's the reason I started looking into the real estate. And I realized that, okay, landlording, let's do that. And it had its own challenges. I came up with situations, incidents, tenants that created so much of problem for me. I was really looking for that scalability. And quite accidentally, I actually came across the multifamily syndication world. The syndication being that key to unlock that truly passive income. At that point, I was looking for passive. I was mind blown. I was actually really happy, but at least at that same time, I was really restless. And it made me restless thinking that here I am saving every dollar, working diligently and putting my hard earned money in this whips of stock market. And here at the same time, for years, there's somebody next to me just because he's not sharing with me. He's doing all these syndicated investments and he's doing also that infinity backing strategy that I came across another strategy. And I just didn't know about it. And what unfortunately that our community has grown up that we don't share things. We don't share our salaries, we don't share our financial status, which is okay. Nobody asks you what dollar amounts you have, right, in your bank account. But it's my passion. I truly see that we were a completely different community if we were we were to share our successes and our failures as well. So if we were to tell that, hey, this worked for me, it worked great, you should also do it. Or hey, this I failed horribly at. Please don't do it because I have experience from that. You should be cautious about it. So this is the need I think have that passion that I have for our communities to get together, kind of help each other. And that's why I formed Think Outside the Stocks. So Think Outside the Stocks is really me bringing in these strategies that I learned, forming a community, sharing with them, sharing how to do it in the right way, getting those good investments to them so that they can do what I have been doing and I have been successful at. So that's really where my passion comes from.
Yeah, and I'm right there with you on being passionate about talking more about money in general. I think that's one of the biggest problems we have, specifically in America. I can't talk for some other countries, but I notice
Mhm.
culturally here, it's just not something that seems very acceptable. I've traveled to other countries and they'll just straight up ask you, how much do you make? Why aren't you married yet? Why don't you have kids? Like things that we would consider unacceptable from a stranger. But in other places, it's just not as taboo. And I think that's where a lot of the problems that we have with money come from is the fact that we don't talk about it. So we can't learn. And that's one thing that's been made so much better, I think, from technology, be it good, is resources like YouTube and stuff like that, where you hear people talking about how much money they made, how they made it, how much money they lost, and how they lost it so that you can learn these lessons. Because when I was growing up as a kid, those conversations were not being had at the dinner table. And I think that's something we could certainly improve on. And I'm trying to start in my own house with the same thing, talking with my daughters who are now 7 and 4 years old about
Yeah.
money so that they don't feel it's a taboo.
It's a great thing that you're doing, Tim, and that brings a like kind of a second level of passion. But when I am talking about think outside the stocks, mostly what happens is that it's still mindset is that still the male take care of the financial part of it and the female don't, right? They just take care of the rest of it, which tremendously. There's a lot on their plate as well. But there's so much talent there. And I think when women starts getting interested in understanding this asset class, right? It's different from stock market, so that's been my another passion. I want more and more household where I can educate the woman of the household to bring this strategy, their financial structure, right? I believe that when you teach a man, you teach an individual, but if you teach a woman, you actually teach the entire family because she's the one who's going to bring that to the dining table, discuss these things, even if growing up, she's 8, 9 years old, starting there, and you have started that journey with your kids, having two daughters, educating them on that financial steps and ladders. So going back in my childhood, when I say that there was no discussion at all about it, imagine where our next generation could be when we are starting that generation so early. So kudos to you that you are starting that thought process.
Thank you. Yeah, and you talked about some of the other methods that are out there for helping people to grow their wealth. And one of those was the infinity banking system. And
Mhm.
that's something that I've personally been looking into lately myself. And granted, maybe a late start, but better late than never. But can you explain to the listeners exactly what that is and how does it help grow their wealth?
Absolutely. So we think outside the stocks. What I like first of all, before I jump into the infinity banking system, what I like is to take a holistic view, right, of the. We are not just talking about making passive income. We are just not talking about adding the multiple schemes. We are talking about more end to end. So this is what I like to do about them. My approach is a threefold. The first step is, first of all, start creating that passive income, completely passive income, so they can start replacing slowly, bit by bit, their W2 income so they can move towards the financial freedom. Sometimes people think that freedom is the end goal, but I like to look beyond that. The second thing I like to focus on is to reduce the tax liability because I think when adding financial income is important, avoiding the wealth leakages is very important too. So the second aspect of it is to stop your wealth leakages because you take that leakage if you spend say 10,000 in taxes, harness and grow that compounded, snowball it for next 20 years or something every year that you're saving that 10,000 save in taxes. So that's the second level that I like to look at is to stop your tax leakages, make some efficient investments for not as much as taking money out of your pocket. And then the third aspect of it is to increase their net worth, right? So when we have real estate investment, for example, bringing in equity at the end of the sales cycle, and every time they exit, there's a net worth increase. There's a net worth increase. And then holistically, so that three-step process that, you know, increase your passive income so you can replace your W2, it decreases your tax liability, and then lastly, to increase your net worth. And then holistically, how are we passing that as a generational wealth to the next generation? The Rockefellers and the Walt Disneys of this country, they use this method with infinity banking. And coming back to your question now, the infinity banking, they used it in two ways. First of all, they created with a vehicle that they can use when they're alive, and they can, as at the end of generation, they can pass as a massive generational wealth to the next generation. And it just gets passed tax free in certain conditions, of course, with that further limits that we have. But you can create this strategy, you can use it while you're alive, and you can pass it as a next generation. So that's the holistic perspective that I like to bring to my investors and my listeners and whoever I'm educating. That's the true passion that I have. So let's talk about the infinity banking for a minute, right? So what is an infinity banking and why should we consider it? Think about your bank. What do? They give, suppose you give them $10,000 in a year and say that, okay, just put it in CD or something. If they give you, say, 3% or something, and they give you that money, the interest, they take that 10,000, put it as a leverage at a much higher percent, right? So it's like 8%, 10%, whatever. So they create the leverage of that 7%. That's their money that they created after. That is that almost 600, 700% growth that they have on money that they're spending. So you need to think about harnessing that for yourself and create your own bank account. You create your bank account, which is your savings account. So I look at the savings and investing as two different buckets. Infinity banking is your saving strategy. Think about the money that you are putting there as your buffer, especially when you're an entrepreneur. You have some, I mean, you are a very person who plans a lot and executes a lot, right, Tim? So that money that is your sleep well money, which you know that in case something happens, that 5 months, 6 months of expenses are securing the bank account, or something goes wrong in my property for my emergencies, this money is there secure in the. You take that money, you put it in a vehicle where it kind of provides you consistent growth that is tax free, that is rolling in every year. It's kind of snowballing. At the same time, it's providing you the death benefit, that is the protection of your own life. Your life is the biggest investment that you have. If your life, the risk that your family has against it, if it is not protected, that is just the saddest part, right? So the infinity banking system is done in kind of a way to structure in a life insurance and very specific product, and cannot emphasize enough that it has to be a mutual company, it has to be a whole life product, and it has to be created in a certain structured way. This is not your regular life insurance. The way I try to create the structure is that you can reduce that expense, that cost of life insurance. So when you push a lot of money that you would normally save in your bank account into this policy, into your own bank account, every year these mutual companies, they're going to push the dividends, and they're going to give you the dividends that is being consistently paid over hundreds of years. Some companies have been existing over 150 to 100 years, and they have the history of paying this consistent dividend year after year, and only whole life mutual product can do that. So, for example, the Penn Mutual company that I really like is 5.75% dividend last year. So that way you're snowballing what you would just literally rot that money to inflation in your savings account in the bank. You're creating that, and there are so many advanced strategies that you can use from that. But to help your investors, help your listeners understand this concept, is essentially you take that money that you want to save and put it into your own bank, get the consistent dividend year after year without taxes, and it's rolling in, compounding, snowballing, at the same time providing you two advantages: the life protection, and also you can utilize this money while you're alive. That's the part of it that is mind blowing. That was my aha moment, that, oh my God, I can utilize my life insurance when I'm alive. It be possible. So that's the trick.
Yeah, and I think the problem some people run into is they hear that and they say, "Oh, that sounds too good to be true. It can't be a real thing." And
Yeah.
I think my wife literally said that. And but the problem is there are all kinds of advanced strategies that the upper middle class and upper class use that we're just never exposed to because
Yeah.
we're not in that strata. So it's easy for us to assume that these things can't be real or no, that can't be right. There's got to be a catch. But it's only because we've never been introduced to it. Whereas in other groups, it's almost obvious, like because it's been
Yeah.
passed down and it's been done for so long and so on.
So I'll tell you the three things why even, I mean, I don't blame you or your wife, because I was exactly in the same shoe. When I heard about this first time, I was like, oh my God, this is just another thing that somebody's trying to sell to me, right? So when I come across something like that, I'm a very analytical and I'm a very data oriented person, and I'm a math major. So I look at numbers in a very different way. I have to, like, I'm sure you do that too. I'll build a spreadsheet, I will do this and that, and I kind of prove it to myself if it is right or wrong. I don't just sit on my and say that, oh, yeah, it doesn't make sense. I will try to either prove it wrong, and in the process, I prove myself, actually, the system proved itself right. And that's what happened. And when I came to that point, I realized that three things happen with people. First of all, it's life insurance. Life insurance has a bad name. You look at the agent and you want to turn around the corner. You don't want to even look at that person, right? And there's a reason for that because there has been the whole cycle about how much commission that they make and how much they earn from that and how much pushy they are, how pushy they are. But what I'm talking about is maybe like a 3% people in the country are doing it, are people like me who believe in this system, and we are not structuring in a way that actually we are not getting paid enough in the way that other life insurance agent would get paid. And we are okay with that because we believe in this system. And that's why it's very important for you to go and implement it with somebody who believes and understands. So the three problems that I said people normally have is, first of all, life insurance has that bad name. Second of all, they don't understand. It's too complex to understand, and it was too complex to understand for me as well. But when I get down to that point where I kind of help myself understand it, I said to myself that, oh my God, I built something that I could put in front of somebody else and help them understand it. So that education, that underlying passion that I always have, I try to help them understand over and over again. I've spent hours with people just to help them understand what the system is and how they can use it in their financial strategy. It's incredible. And the third thing that people think, oh, it just takes time. I'm not going to utilize. I just have this need of for my money to invest into a single family or syndication or whatever they want to invest in. That's not true. You can build this system and you can literally in first week start utilizing it, leverage it, and utilize it somewhere else. So those are the three things I try to focus on and educate on. And you're welcome to come and just have this discussion. And anybody who's listening, you're welcome to have that discussion. At least it's worthy to give that consideration once you understand it and you think that, okay, no, it doesn't make sense for me. It doesn't have a place in my strategy. Then it's a different story. But do not let this pass saying that, oh, I just don't understand it. I just don't have time for that.
Yeah, and I think you're right. It comes down to the confused mind says no. And I think that's just the default reaction with a lot of folks. But if they dig a little deeper and educate themselves on the product, then it starts to reveal itself and it starts to make a little more sense. So I know that you have your own podcast as well. And you
Yep.
talk to a lot of people about how they can use this whole think outside the stocks concept. One thing I wanted to ask you about is with the folks that you've spoken to, what are some of the most interesting ways that you've heard people say that they invest outside of the stock market?
I have seen a lot of real estate, Tim, quite honestly. People who understand the strength of real estate, they have been actually utilizing it a lot. And in terms of the diversification that they think about, they will focus as one particular niche, maybe multifamily, maybe mobile home park, and especially if they're active in it, right? But at the same time, they're also creating other paths because if you are active in certain thing and you're investing in your own deals, you kind of creating some kind of level of risk for yourself because now everything is dependent on you, right? As a part of the team, as part of person, or there's just kind of a diversification. But the other aspects that I have seen people happening investing in are the other asset classes, for example, industrial, mobile home parks, strip storages, senior housing. These are the more prominent that I see because they have the fundamentals again, like multifamily are very strong. I have seen actually investments, the automated teller machines, the kind of the cash draw machines that people think that as typically owned by bank. That's another misconception. And I actually have ATM investment in my portfolio that I have put in for investors, which pays really high cash flow, recession resistance. It's a little different than the actual real estate because this is like the software, almost like a laptop, right? That it's diminishing in value, but it's providing you a great cash flow, almost 24% annualized cash flow every year. So I've seen that. I have seen a lot of people actually doing angel investing, VC investing as well. So those are the areas that I'm not familiar with, and I would look to 12 and find out more about that. But my nature is I try to be more risk managed, and I like more risk managed investments for my investors. Oil and gas is another thing that people focus on. I think that's a high risk, high reward because there has been occasions where people have lost their entire capital just because either something went wrong or the sponsor or the partners were not right. There's a lot of due diligence in that. So I would just say, just be careful that due diligence in every step that you could be is important. Somebody who's doing that due diligence for you, helping you do that due diligence, understand that. is very important. But oh my God, there's one thing that I have realized that how well they do it and how we do it, it's completely different. And as an immigrant to this country, finding those more and more strategies, how wealthy create kind of it's like a vault around their wealth and generation to generation passed to the next one and the next one. That's what I am focused on, and I want to bring it to light. And with infinity banking strategy, that's how Rockefellers they actually build their generation wealth year after year, generation after generation. Walt Disney actually, very interestingly, he started the Disneyland using here his money in that banking system that he created. So we wouldn't have had the happy place on the earth if it was not for his banking policy. So we don't understand. And being in the same stream, you are maybe flying somewhere, and the next person next to you will be doing all these things, and you will not understand that.
Yeah, and I think that's like our responsibility, right? Like if I feel like if I find out something that can help people, it doesn't matter whether it's infinity banking or passively investing in multifamily syndications, whatever it is, like I don't feel that need to like hoard it as a secret because I was bad when I was like, why didn't I know about this before? It seems
Yeah.
straightforward once you learn about it. So now I feel like it's part of my responsibility to educate other people. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about it, because I can tell people, and sure, they may be a little skeptical at first because they don't know about it. But once again, you show them the evidence, it's like, I'm not trying to convince you. I'm just trying to let you know.
Yeah.
Like you could have your money growing in something that provides better returns, is more recession resistant, and less volatile than what 95% of Americans have almost all of their
Yeah.
money invested in right now, which is the stock market in some way, shape, or form, right?
Yeah, yeah. And don't get me wrong, because of the stocks is my philosophy, is that out of the box to the philosophy, that out of the stocks philosophy to investing. I have tremendous respect for people who can do it, who think inside the stock, create this great portfolio, great returns, and consistently provide that. I have tremendous respect for those people. But there is, on the other side of spectrum, there are just many who are actually losing money putting into it. And I feel kind of hurt that they're losing their hard-earned money there. So you're right when you're saying that we have that responsibility, is we are not putting this information out there. And you and me, we have taken it as a passion. I feel like for the days that I'm not putting this education out there, I'm not putting, if I, like, for example, last few months, I had to take some break because of, again, some health conditions with my family and everybody that's going through. All the time, I felt like, oh my God, I'm not reaching my people. I'm not telling them about it. I'm doing a disservice to them. It needs to be reached to the people who needs to be reached, needs to be told to
Mhm.
people who are in that dire state on the whims of in the stock market up and down. I mean, they are the one like getting up in the middle of the night at 2 a.m. and looking at their portfolio and it's like going down and taking a shower and thinking about, oh my God, reaching that hand out and saying, I forgot to check today what is my portfolio doing. I want to help people like you deserve to have that stress free and multifamily, what you are doing, what we are doing, right? It is such a worry free environment for them. It's a day and night, right? So for them to be able to invest in what I call the fundamentals of multifamily is so strong. The supply and demand has been off the charts, right? So we are providing that a good environment for them to stay at the same time. Our investors are making that risk managed returns in a fundamentally strong asset class, which is providing them tax benefits, a relatively higher growth than what stock market, even at its best, can perform, and completely passive. I mean, the most that they have, I was talking to an investor just before your call, and I was telling them that, hey, Mr. X, the most you're going to do, put in effort, is what you're doing right now, the due diligence of the investment, and you have to do that diligently. But once you go in, I typically say that you don't even have to lift a finger, but you do have to lift a finger because we're going to send you as new newsletters. We're going to send you that money in your bank account, and you have to click to check your bank account and check your mail. So that's the most that they're gonna do ever going through that cycle of the passive investment. So it is our responsibility, and you and me, we take it very responsibly to just pass on this because we have bought by it. We don't want others to be burnt by it.
Yeah. And that's, of course, not to say that it's all going to be rainbows and butterflies in every syndication either, but it's about giving people options at least. And I think in terms of the passivity of it, that's why I see a lot of folks who have maybe 2 or 3 houses, some properties that they've been landlording over themselves. And maybe they were getting great cash flow the whole time and they built up
Right.
appreciation, but they just don't want to be as involved as they get older. So they decide to liquidate those assets and put them into something more passive, like a syndication, where yeah, they have to do the work up front of vetting those operators, but after that, it's kind of like mailbox money, right? Like they
Yeah.
don't have to worry about the tenants and what's happening with that because they're at least 3 steps removed from all
Yeah.
that stuff.
Yeah. And going back to previous life, right? The consulting life when I was working those tremendous hours and growing my kids. And so these are the families that we are trying to impact, right? People do not have that time to look into what these things are and how can I manage the property and getting a midnight call from tenant for a broken talk or the problems that we faced in our landlording experience, right? A tenant who's in jail or the tenant who was just left so much trash on our property. So if they have even 1 hour, I say, to extra to spend, they would rather go and spend with their kids and maybe go on a date with their spouse. Why would they spend that time in doing something that the property has to manage, right? So it's very important for passive investors. And I'm actually very grateful that if I had not taken the sudden kind of break in my career, I would have never had the need to find out something else. I thought I was doing great. But the moment I found it, I'm grateful that I came to this path. I found this to banking and the savings and this investing strategy. And I can now educate people. It's like it's my responsibility, and I'm doing the disservice if I'm not helping at least one person at a time. So for me, that you're right, the investing part of it, it's after all, it's investing. It comes with inherent risk. It does have that real asset behind it, right? So the risk is well managed. That's the risk managed. It's not risk free, but it's risk managed. That's an important aspect of it. And on the other side, if somebody who is very conservative and they want that risk free, that infinity banking is that risk free for them because there is a guarantees built into it. For example, currently 3.5% is the guaranteed growth that you're going to get into it. And some people think that, oh, let's do it with index universal, like a life insurance policy. That's not risk free. That has inherent risk no matter what there it is. So that's how I look at it. And I look at it once you start building that risk free growth, you can start using the advanced strategies and this infinity banking system you can utilize to invest the same dollar as it's growing inside your banking system. The same dollar can be used as a leverage into your investments. You can literally use the whole structure for your kids' education instead of 529 plan because then it's not tied up to that educational purpose. And then you have penalties if there's an extra left over there. You can use it as your retirement planning. You can, if you decide that, okay, I want to retire at 55 and I want to start the retirement income at 55 you or 50. You can start anytime you want. You can contribute as much as you want. So that's what I think the difference is to look at things out of the box way. I've been a big proponent of thinking outside the box constantly. And these two strategies just coming into your financial structure can create a mind-blowing change for your own financial trajectory. At the same time, it's not going to take away the time and effort and the stress needed to manage these things.
Yeah, and that's some great insight into that multi-pronged approach to both building your wealth and retaining your wealth. All right, so this has been some awesome conversation, but we do need to move on to the turbo round. All right, so
Absolutely.
I'm going to ask you 3 questions that I ask every guest, and I just ask you for your quick, honest answer. All right,
Right.
the first one, what is one red flag every investor should look out for? And that could be a passive or an active investor.
I think you have to look at the investment in an isolation by itself, right? So once you decide the syndication, you are right, it's not rainbows and roses, right? you have to look at that investment in a isolation and look at what risk that it proposed to. And right now in current environment, the lending is the biggest risk I think we should consider. Whether you are an active investor, whether you're active syndicators, or whether you are a passive investor, think about looking at the nitty-gritty details of the lending product that is going. Don't fall the victim of the rates, and if you don't have that right rate cap as an active investor, always look at the many options that you have and think about something creatively. Think about if there is seller financing, think about if they have loan assumptions, think about reducing your loan to value ratio so that you can get in a better terms, right? So that's really important. As a passive investor, again, that risk is really high right now. So look at something which is fixed lending terms, because imagine what's going to happen if you are not in the right lending terms. Suppose even the cap rate, right? People purchase the cap rate, and what cap rate is an insurance against that volatility of the interest rate, right? So people who purchase the cap rates 2 years back, if that was say 50,000 and then accounted by 50,000 for it, 2 years down the line, if they were to renew it and that becomes 2 million, what is going to impact is it's going to trickle down. It's going to affect your cash flow and maybe even the capital that's invested into it. So that's how important it is. So that's the red flag, I would say. Right now, in current environment, 2023, beginning of it, I think lending is the biggest thing that you should take a look at. There are more other things that you should, but if you ask me that one thing, oh, this is that number one priority.
Absolutely, no doubt. The lending rates, the hot issue right now, because it's having such an impact on how deals are getting done and if they make sense. All right, next question. What is a myth about this business that you would like to set straight?
So the myth that I commonly hear that, oh, nobody else is doing it, why should I do it, right? Ask that question, that out of the box question, why is it important for you? Are you ready to, when you started investing your 401k into the stock market, did you ask yourself that question, why is everybody doing it, right? Everybody naturally put their money into stock market. Nobody asked that question, this is my money, why is the government forcing me to only purchase the stock market? So unless you leave an employer, your money from the 401k or the retirement account does not get free till you have that point to roll over into like your self-directed or something else, some other vehicle. So you have your control. And by the way, you do have that control. You get that chance to have that control if you don't know about it. So ask yourself that question, if it is my money, why am I just supposed to invest into just stock market? Why do not I have that option? And the amount of evaluation that you're doing right now for real estate and kind of feeling that fear and the gut-wrenching feeling that you have that, oh my God, nobody else is doing it. Why should I invest in syndication? Ask yourself that question, that how much did you recognize the risk that you're going into stock market and how much up or down that you have done and how much of your hard-earned money that you have put to the winds of the stock market and lost it. And that is what one thing I want to change in your perspective. Take a bird's eye view of your financial structure and look at syndication. If you're looking into passively, multifamily or any other, this is the way to go just because everybody else is not doing it and you should. That doesn't mean that you should not do it. Think about it, evaluate it, see how risk manages and go for it.
Exactly. Question the status quo. Love it. All right. The final question. What does success look like to you?
Great question, Tim. I am on a mission. My mission with Think Outside the Stocks is to change financial trajectory of one family at a time, and thousands more to go. So I'm talking about the change in financial trajectory I can inject in their financial path right now. So imagine a flight path, right? If you interject that 2-degree change in your flight, your destination to land could be tremendously different and tremendously successful. So I want to do one family at a time right now. So success for me is when I have reached that goal, that 1,000 family and more, and just keep growing more and more. For me, it's essential that how much massive amount of value I can add, massive amount of people. And that's what success to me. If somebody is 20 years down the line sitting on a beach and sipping their pina colada and completely passively investing and financially free and set this generational wealth path and think about it. Oh, Madhavi came to my life, or I heard her podcast, and she made that 2-degree change. That's success for me.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, Madhavi. Well, this has been amazing. Please tell our guests how they can get a hold of you and if you have anything else that you would like to share with them.
Absolutely. So, one thing I would say that if you have gotten any tidbits from this conversation and you're thinking of taking that action, it's always easy to push out and say that let's take that action tomorrow or sometime later. The time to take that action is not tomorrow, not today. The time to take an action is now. So make that small, big step, at least start one baby step towards taking that action. If you have heard something that you like and you want to make that 2 degrees change in your financial trajectory. And one thing I would love to give away is there are two things that I have. I have the guide for passive investors, which kind of highlights on the difference between the landlording journey to the passive investor and advantages of it. If you go to think outside the stocks/passive, that's where you will get my guide, that free guide that you can download and just understand more, just understand the syndication more. And if you're interested in that infinity banking strategy, you can just set up a call with me. You can go to think outside the stocks and just set up a quick 15-minute call. Just see if these two strategies make sense for you in your life. And if it's the right fit, we just go from there. Just start your educational journey, that baby step right now as you're listening to it. So yeah, there you go.
All right, great. And we will definitely have all that information in the show notes. Hey, Madhavi, I appreciate you coming on, and I look forward to continue to see you do big things on your journey to multifamily millions.
Thank you so much, Tim. I appreciate you calling me on this show. I loved having this conversation with you. And just think outside the stocks, people. Just keep thinking outside the stocks. Tim is doing a great job here. I hope you will listen more and more information that he has to bring.
All right, thank you. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Bye.